Chapter 62. The Pirates. His eyes narrow as he beholds the psychotic dog woman and accompanying drone. The battlefield is a small town that used to be a farming community until this absolute wretch emptied it. The fields are wild and overgrown. The houses are nothing more than rotted-out husks, and the roads are cragged dents in the landscape. Old bones litter the places where the people they were once part of died and were left to rot. The world is watching, and they expect death. His smile doesn't fade one iota. The death is coming, yes, but it's not his. Any last words? He asks the sociopathic witch, and a brow rises up. You think that I am going to die here? What an interesting whoop. She dives to the side as a dozen tiny holes are gouged into the ground she was standing on. Oh, piercing techniques. Do you want to be inside me? She asks, and he is not only not moved physically but seems unmoved emotionally by her taunt. Strange epitaph. He notes before she dodges again, always just a touch beyond the sudden holes in the ground. Then she gasps and twists to try and stop something only she can see. She lets out a scream of pain as it slices into her hands and gouts of blood erupts from her front and back, running down and tracing a long, thin, invisible blade. Disappointing, he remarks before she erupts in pale green energy, highlighting and knocking away an enormous swarm of invisible swords that had been racing towards her. They shatter into base axiom as they tumble, and he nods, the first move he's made since he acknowledged her presence. Did you think that such a pathetic technique would kill me? Me? She howls at him. No, he says simply and holds out his hand before clenching his fist. The ground beneath and around Butcher Bitch ripples before slamming together before erupting into spikes that stab inwards, reducing anything caught inside to a pincushion. She reappears on top of the bundle unharmed in a teleport, and then the whole thing shifts again at Franklin's gesture to shoot into the sky and throw off her balance. The pillar of earth and stone shifts into an enormous serpent that bites down on the sadist before erupting as she conjures innumerable cutting edges to reduce it to gravel. The air itself screams as she lashes out with her claws, each one projecting an enormous blade that Franklin deflects with ease. Not that he had to do much. Most of the blades went completely wild. Shit, J3 says into his earpiece. What's wrong? Franklin asks, turning on his mic as he deflects another blade of axiom. His axiom sensing makes the attack so obvious that she might as well be posting giant neon signs about her every intention with some random babble besides. Bitch, cut my gun. I'm going to need some time to repair it, J3 says. Understood. Franklin replies as his eyes narrow. He has to be more careful to dispel, block, and parry rather than deflect. Who knows where the energy will go if he doesn't? A blade comes for him and he swats it into basic axiom motes. Franklin, be careful. Thunderthought's getting excited. J3 warns him. What's she doing? He asks, as he catches a blade of axiom that manifests as a bright white crescent. He examines its construction and pulls it apart. Her technique is efficient but very crude. Her many torsos are waving around and the hands are trailing sparks. Hey, wait a minute, the sky is going overcast. She's weaving a storm together, getting the home field advantage and toying with both of us at the same time. Franklin remarks as he creates a barrier to dispel numerous smaller blades that soar at him like a swarm of living things. The way they're put together reminds him vaguely of crushed glass. She ducks under more invisible spears. She's good at it. He won't deny that she's got good instinct, but terrible battleground awareness. More axiom already bent to his will and primed to obey sinks into the terrain as she continues to dodge his blows even as he blocks and shatters hers, making a point to disperse the energy she's throwing out and place his own marker on it. Stop her from using this next trick. He then snaps his fingers and the wrath of God erupts all around Butcher Bitch in a pillar of fire that screams upwards until it runs out of air in the upper atmosphere. He bends it so that it spares her camera, which catches every second of her horrified scream in the exact same way that she had done to a pregnant mother not 3 days prior. The screaming actually helps her. Expelling the air stops the fire from going in and torching her lungs. Then the screams stop, and she is gone with the space he had spared for the camera empty. She teleported it as well. Interesting, she thinks she has a chance. Up! J3 warns him even as he snaps up his right arm to catch the enormous crescent of rage-fueled axiom energy that crashes down at him. He hadn't bothered to look up. Butcher Bitch slams into the ground like a meteor, smoking like she's just dropped from orbit and pissed as all hell. Franklin smirks at the sight of her even as he slowly cracks and then shatters her attack. The fire had burnt off all her fur, the fur she'd been relying on to avoid being naked. There's a pause. It stretches out and Franklin slowly reaches into his coat and pulls out a very large t-shirt and a loose pair of running pants. He tosses them at her. They hit the ground an arm's length to her left. "Cover your shame while I kill you," he states coldly. What? He's destroyed her rhythm and thrown her off her game. Does she even realizing that he's toying with her mentally? Is she so oblivious to be unable to recognize her own sadism returned to her? "Do you really think you're getting out alive? Cover your shame before I kill you," Franklin states coldly. What are you? Yes, she is that oblivious. Pity. Pest control. Franklin remarks she growls and the world erupts in glowing blue blades that slam against him. He's engulfed in a blazing white axiom fire that consumes the blades and leaves him as nothing but a black silhouette with glowing white eyes. More. Butcher Bitch howls and the world around him begins to shatter and shake, unable to touch the tiny island covered in protective axiom fire, and he growls. More, he orders her. He wants her just as helpless and scared as the hundreds and hundreds of children she's brutalized. She screams in utter fury, and from the distance a massive knife covered in strange markings that burn with axiom flies into her hand, and she charges Franklin, who catches the blade in his hand and holds it at bay. "I said more!" He roars in her face as he shatters the knife and sends her bouncing backwards across the ground. A flick of his wrist and the clothing he tossed out is blown towards her on controlled winds. "Cover your damn shame! Unlike you, I let my victims keep some dignity when I kill them." He growls out and she sits up looking furious as axiom crackles across her skin. Her wound stitched shut and her fur starts to grow back out. "Clothes on. Now," he orders, still engulfed in the axiom fire. "What are—" She's cut off as he holds up his hand, and there's a sudden line of darkness between from his hand to travel right next to her head, followed by a concussive blast that knocks her down. "What?" She starts standing up. "Clothes now," he says. "What?" She's thoroughly confused at this point. "Now." His barked order physically impacts her hard enough to knock her down again. She slips on both the shirt and pants and he nods. The shirt says "I'm fine" in galactic trade with a massive patch that looks like a bloodstain on it. Then she looks utterly baffled before it turns to fury. She draws in axiom so much it becomes physically visible and howls as her thin form erupts with muscle as her fur fully grows back, and her hair grows down to her tail as her eyes start crackling white with power. She whips her arms together, and massive blades erupt from her claws and home in on him to shatter against the white fire. "What does it take to kill you?" she demands in fury as she launches more and more blades before summoning a series of cutting tools to send flying at him to shatter at his presence. "More than you have. Make no mistake, you witch. I'm drawing this out because you deserve to suffer after all you've done." He snarls at her as a monomolecular circular saw blade shatters into splinters against his axiom fire shield and melts to slag before hitting the ground. "You can't! I am the one who cuts, not who gets cut. I will kill you. I will kill you and feed your limbs to your own brides." She bellows her madness for the world to see, and his arm snaps up in response, bringing a concussive wave in the microsecond. After his attack, shears off half her hair and her left ear in a heartbeat. She gasps in horror as she holds a hand up to the side of her head and looks at the blood before looking down to see her severed ear. She looks from the ear, to him, to the ear, back to him. Then she screams, high and keening, and gouges get rent out of the ground around her as the scream continues. Her madness no longer has any way to hide itself. Then she starts twitching all over the place as her eyes go completely feral. Then she vanishes to reappear right in front of Franklin to slash at him with her claws glowing with axiom and leaving bright blue trails through the air, another cross to paint a massive X over Franklin before vanishing with a twitch to reappear behind him and start trying to maul him with a flurry of absurd cuts and slashes that fail to penetrate his fire as she screeches like a damned soul. "Dee dee 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 dee." She finds the power of speech again as she disappears to reappear mid-slash against his fire shield to no avail before vanishing and slashing again and again as if there were 4 of her each trying to find some gap in his defense. Pathetic. "This is the great and terrible witch that slaughtered this town?" Franklin asks, and she rears back before screaming again at him. The sheer concussive wave from her screech tears at the ground and shatters the remains of a rotted building beyond him. The fire doesn't even flicker. She pants as she glares at him before screaming like an animal and leaping into the air, ripping at the nearby axiom so hard that it's physically visible, and lets out another scream. He glances directly towards the recording drone that has one lens focused on him and the other on her. "So does she have any settings beyond senile or screaming?" he asks dryly as she continues to gather energy. "Hey, stupid, I don't have all night. I've got places to go, witches to kill, and a world to help. Put some hustle in it. You're due for a shallow grave in 10 minutes. She lets out a screech that would be unholy and unnerving if she hadn't already been screaming for several minutes, and drops out of the sky, bringing down the collected axiom in an enormous cutting wave. The wave goes from moving insulting slow to suddenly simply upon him, and Franklin moves to catch the attack even as his fire shield shatters. The ground behind him and in front of him is suddenly cut in two, except where he's standing. There's a groaning sound, then the earth splits, and the left side of the battlefield rises up 2 feet along the massive cut, now revealed to be continent-sized. Franklin adjusts flawlessly with his left foot rising with it as he regards his hands. The witch lands on the raised part of the cut continent and pants in exhaustion. She then smiles as dark red blood slowly congeals off of Franklin's hands and onto the ground. "All right then, introductions are over," he says casually. "What?" "Introductions are over. I understand you now, and I'd like to think you have some understanding of me." He continues before rubbing his hands together. There's a flash of white fire over his hands and the blood is gone. Still, this is a bit of a problem, he notes, glancing at the sliced away part of the continent. Then he forces his left foot down with an enormous boom as he slams the divided continental pieces back together. Light runs through the crack and it fades away as if it never was. "Now then, time to fight," he says softly as he takes a step forward, and the witch instinctively takes one back. "There we are. Now you begin to understand exactly what's in store for you." "Dude, badass, but I still need more time," J3 says. "How's the pop gun?" Franklin asks. "In one piece I've got 5 shots for it," J3 answers. "Then get it ready. I'll finish this one myself," Franklin says as he takes another step towards the terrified mass murderess. "Who are you talking to?" she asks in terror. "The one who would have been your executioner, but I've decided to take the honor myself, he says, cracking his knuckles. Lucky you.